Hello and welcome to the 8th day of Squatchmas. Now tonight we're going to stay close to home, as in right here in the Buckeye State. So go get your snacks and grab a spot by the tree. I'm ready for this to get started. You? Yeah, I thought so. Let's do this Squatchmas thing. A few years back, I was feeding a Bigfoot that I'm pretty sure had been shot. I live in southeastern Ohio in a mostly original 1950s ranch-style house out on a rural road. We raised our 2 children here, and we know the area well. 3 years ago, I had an issue in the fall. Something started to get into our garbage. Not uncommon in the hilly area that we live in. There are woods all around, and there are all kinds of things that are looking for food all the time. I was only surprised because we kept a concrete block on top of the garbage cans. No matter what I did, it kept happening. So I crisscrossed the top of the cans with 2 bungee cords. Then I put the concrete block back on top. But something was still getting into the trash. The concrete block would be on the ground by the cans, and the bungee cords were removed. I keep our garbage cans on the side of the house by the garage. The house is set up so the garage is at one end of the house. Next to it on the inside is the living room and the kitchen walls. Then the other side of the house contains bedrooms and bathrooms. Thing is, you can't see to the other side of the garage where the cans are unless you go out and walk around to that side of the house. It's completely brick. Fast forward to sometime early December. I was on a ladder hanging out some icicle lights one afternoon. I knew my wife was out Christmas shopping with her sister and some nieces, so I knew she wasn't home. And my son wasn't due to come home from Ohio University for a few more days. I heard my plastic garbage can lid open, and I heard it slam against the back of the can. This is one of those hinged lid garbage cans, and it's pretty big. So when you open it, you either have to hold it open by holding the lid up, or you push it back and let it swing all the way around on its hinges to hit the back of the can. It's a very distinctive hollow plastic thump, and it's a pretty weird one. So when I heard it, I knew what it was. Whatever it had been getting in my garbage was over there. Right now. I knew I had 2 choices to figure out what this was. I could get down off the ladder and go walk around to that side of the house, or I could go a few more steps up, get on the roof, walk over and take a look from safety. I used to be a roofer in my younger years, so I'm good on a roof, and our house did not have a steep pitch, and everything was dry. I went up on the roof and walked on the low pitch over the garage. I chose the roof route because I was thinking maybe we had a bear coming down from the hills for a daily snack. A bear was something I did not want to walk around the corner of the house and right into. I stood back on the roof and I leveraged my vision to just be able to see over the edge of the end of the garage. I saw a brown, hairy head, shoulders and arms, and part of the back where it was bent digging through the trash bags. You know, I did hate putting food in the garbage, but where we were, there was no other choice. We live in the country on a septic system that was original to the house build. Excess waste from a garbage disposal is not recommended for older and smaller septic systems. So we had no choice, no garbage disposal. And right here was the very thing that I had been worried about the entire time we lived there. All the food in the garbage, drawing animals bigger than a raccoon up to the house. Well, I figured it was a bear, so I stood there and I yelled, "Scat, bear, scat!" I yelled it out in the loudest and harshest voice I had. The thing below by the garbage cans straightened up and lifted its face to look right up at me. And it left me speechless. Not because of what it was, but because the left side of the face looked like a hot, bubbly pizza without any cheese on it. The damage I saw extended down its neck and part of the upper chest and shoulder. The damaged half of its face was in a state that I don't want to be too descriptive about, but I'm going to say it was very, very bad. I had just maybe half a second of that look, and then it was limp walking away, just below a jog, over to the woods on that side of the property. It looked back fearfully a couple times at me. It was moving on 2 legs, 2 feet, no doubts. What it didn't have was anything that was bear-like. No snout, no rounded ears, nothing. Even the color wasn't a bear color. It was a light brown color, close to a red. I stood up there on the roof, with the world just kind of spinning for me. I knew now what had been digging in my garbage, and why it could move the concrete block and undo the bungee straps. It had opposable thumbs and fingers, not paws. We had lived there just over 25 years. I had never so much as seen a squirrel with a botfly in it. I did see deer all the time. I had seen one black bear, but it was just passing through, and it didn't even see me. We didn't even have stray dogs around there as a rule. I mean, I never saw anything that shouldn't have been there. And now I had. I saw something that wasn't supposed to be real, and even so if it wasn't supposed to be where I lived. I guess that tells you what I knew, huh? Come to find out, my county and some of the counties around mine are well known for Bigfoot sightings. I really honestly did not know that. I got myself down off the roof. I went in the house and I got another trash bag to go clean everything up. I think I was in a zone. Strange thing was, I just wasn't worried about it. When it looked up at me, I saw fear on the remaining face that it had. The way it tried to get away, the way it looked back at me, kind of fearful, made me even more sure. I went out there and I cleaned everything up. I put everything that had been torn up and the torn up bags into a fresh bag. But I stopped, and I pulled out what I thought it was probably digging for. The boxes with the leftover chicken bones from our dinner from KFC the other night. I put those on top of the garbage can, and then I went inside. Sometime later I was getting a drink out of the fridge, and I saw a plate of leftovers from the other night too. On impulse I put them on a paper plate, and I walked outside to leave it on the garbage can. To my surprise, the KFC boxes were already gone. Not a sign of them anywhere. I looked around, but I didn't see the creature at all. I put the plate down, backed away, and went inside. I had a really good think about it, and I was figuring it was just hungry. It hadn't threatened me, and I wasn't trying to make a pet of it. But seeing as it was sick or injured, and it was winter time, I thought maybe it wasn't getting enough food for itself. Then I thought, well, how could it heal if it didn't have enough food? I wasn't worried about anyone going out there and running into this creature, because if there was one thing that I knew about being the adult male in that house, I knew with absolute certainty that not another living person in that house was ever going to spontaneously take anything out to the garbage cans on their own. It had never happened in my lifetime anyway. Those garbage cans belonged to me, according to some unwritten and unspoken universal command. So I felt confident no one was going to walk up on him. As long as he didn't come any further around the house, that is. And for the time that he was around, he didn't. He only ever came to the side of the house with the garbage cans. I took to stopping at the dollar store and picking up food for him when I was on lunch. Off-brand Spam types of meat, little cans of Vienna sausages, anything I saw that would be easy to put out, and what I thought might be easy for him to eat. Again, I really don't want to be descriptive, but I don't think there was much left of his cheek and jaw on the left side of the face. Chewing had to be a problem for him, so I tried to make it easy. I also added in some of the leftovers every night. Funny thing was my wife never learned how to cook just for the two of us. Heck, she never even cooked for just the four of us when the kids were home. My wife came from a very big family, so when she learned to cook, everything was in big portions. Anyway, this secret feeding went on for about 4 or 5 days. Then came the Saturday before Christmas. I was up very early. It was a cold and wet morning. I made breakfast for me and my wife. When she went up to shower, I scrambled up a few more eggs quickly, then took the extra sausage patties from earlier that were left over and took them out to the garbage can area on a paper plate. But boy, did I have the shock of my life again. That Bigfoot was waiting for me. He was halfway down the side of the house, and when he saw me, he took a few steps forward. He had been standing up close to the garage, so the rain didn't hit him, and he was shielded from the wind. I hate to say it, but he looked even worse up close. I don't know if he got worse over the week since I saw him when I was on the roof, or if I just had a closer and longer look at him, and he had really been that bad all along. But I don't think so. I think he was getting worse. I could smell the infection on the wind. My mother was a nurse when I was a child. I remember one day she came home and she undressed in the breezeway of the house. Now, before you think this is weird, it wasn't. As a nurse, she did that because the laundry was there in the breezeway. Whatever was on her uniform, she didn't want to bring into the house. So my dad had built a little alcove with a door that she could get in and change out of her clothes. She kept a robe in there to put on. I happened to walk in there, and I was hit with such an awful smell, I had to gag and back out. I didn't even know that she was home or in the alcove. She yelled out she was sorry. I asked her what that awful smell was. She said they had drained a very deep abscess. Something happened. An infection sprayed all over her white uniform. I had no idea what an abscess was, but I never forgot that smell. If you've ever smelled infection, you know what I mean. And when I smelled that Bigfoot, I knew it was infection, and it was bad. I set the food down on the garbage can, and I backed away. It had come forward a little, but it stopped and it watched me as I left. I got a look at its right eye, the good side of its face. And here's another thing you parents out there will surely understand. You know that glassy eye look that your kids get when they have a fever? That's what that eye looked like. I could see it in the white around the eye. It stood within 5 feet of me at the closest point before I backed all the way around to the front of the house. Again, though, I really didn't feel any threat from it. I think it was desperate for the food. Over the next few days, I had a lot of opportunity to smuggle food out to it, but it never waited that close to the garbage cans again. A couple of times it was further down the side of the house, and another time it was waiting by the Bradford pear tree that was further out from the house, but it was on the side of the garage area. It just stood there, it waited, and it watched. Christmas Eve came, and I saved quite a few nibbles for it. With my son home and all of his friends and other visitors that were stopping by, there was a never-ending supply of food, so no one noticed when I took a bunch. I found myself wondering, what the heck was I doing? How long did I think I could keep this up? What happened if I stopped feeding it? If I called someone, I thought they would probably come and kill it. I didn't want that. I knew enough from looking around online that there were places and people that I could call, and they would have been there in a flash. But I just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do that. I thought, maybe after the first of the year, if it's still here, maybe then I'll call someone. I didn't see it anywhere on Christmas Eve when I took the paper plate out full of food. But when I went out there early Christmas morning, the paper plate was gone. On Christmas morning, I set out some leftover breakfast again on a paper plate. But late that night, when I went to go put out the Christmas trash, the breakfast from that morning was still there. That had never happened. But I still had faith, and so after taking out the trash, I put out some Christmas leftovers. The next morning, the Christmas leftovers had been eaten, yes, but not by the Bigfoot. I suspected a raccoon by the way it was all trashed about. The paper plate had been chewed on with little tiny teeth marks in it. It was on the ground, partly ripped up. I thought about it and I realized I don't know what the Bigfoot did with the other paper plates, but he never left them behind. I left food out for 3 more days, but it was always the same. A torn-up paper plate, food scattered. I stood watch late one night all the way down the end of the drive, and sure enough, it was a raccoon doing it. I stopped leaving food out after that. So what happened to that Bigfoot? I honestly don't know. I never saw it again. When it started snowing in January and February, I went out, and I even walked through the woods, looking for footprints. I never found any. I tried to look up pictures of animals that had been shot, but it was mostly the clean shot kills of hunters. I did find a few rather disturbing pictures, but they were close enough that I am convinced that Bigfoot had been shot. I wish I could have helped it more. I wish I could have done something to ease what was surely terribly painful condition for it. I think about that Bigfoot every Christmas. I'm hoping that all the food I fed it gave it strength, it got well, and it went home, wherever home was for it. I was pretty picky about who I told any of this to after it happened. One was my elderly father-in-law, whose father had been a Baptist preacher. He was still in his 80s, a very religious man. I told him all of it. He listened. Then he asked me why I was worried about it. I told him it bothered me to think that it was hungry or in pain, that I would have done the same for a dog or even a chipmunk. He looked at me and then he said, "Well, Phil, maybe it was just a test." Before I could ask what he meant, he quoted me a Bible passage. I had heard it before. "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." I can't explain it, Nance, but it seemed very profound when he said it to me. I had to look it up because I'm not a religious guy myself. It's Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2. Well, Nance, I know your Squatchmas stories are usually happy ones or ones with big, wonderful memories. Mine is not so wonderful, and I don't know if you will allow a story about a Bigfoot that was possibly shot. But please know it wasn't me that shot it, if that is what happened to it. I do know it was injured, and it had an infection, but I really don't know what happened to it. I hope it healed, and it's still out there today. I did the best I could for it. So Merry Christmas to you and to everyone listening. And I know you have your tagline about absence of proof. If I had one now, it's definitely be not forgetful to entertain strangers. Thanks a lot. Phil in Ohio. Thank you for writing that up and sending that in, Phil. And no, not all the Squatchmas stories are happy and bubbly and warm. I mean, some are, but not all. Because I really want the real stories. And let's face it, not all stories are happy. I am glad you did what you could to help that Bigfoot, Phil. And your father-in-law? Well, he just might be right. Maybe it was a test. All right, everyone. Well, I think we can call the 8th day of Squatchmas done. Well, we'll be getting together again tomorrow for the 9th day of Squatchmas. Until then, always remember, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening.